"I am waiting," he cried. "Do come in." They rose up. 2 green and white butterflies flew past them, and in the pear tree at the corner of the garden, a bird began to sing. "You are glad you have met me, Mr. Gray," said Lord Henry, looking at him. "Yes, I am glad now. I wonder, shall I always be glad?" "Always. That is a terrible word. It makes me frightened when I hear it. Women are so fond of using it. They spoil every romance by trying to make it last forever. It is a meaningless word, too. The only difference between a caprice and a lifelong passion is that the caprice lasts a little longer." As they entered the studio, Dorian Gray put his hand upon Lord Henry's arm. "In that case, let our friendship be a caprice," he said quietly. Lord Henry sat down into a large armchair and watched the young man. The painter went on with his work. Sometimes he stepped back to look at it from a distance. In the sunshine, the dust danced and was golden. The rich smell of the roses filled the air. After about a quarter of an hour, Hallward stopped painting, looked for a long time at Dorian Gray, and then for a long time at the picture. "It is quite finished," he cried at last, and wrote his name on the left-hand corner of the canvas. Lord Henry came over and looked at the picture. It was certainly a wonderful work of art, and a wonderful likeness as well. "My dear friend," he said, "it is the finest portrait of modern times. Mr. Gray, come over and look at yourself." Dorian didn't say a word, but came to the picture and looked at it. When he saw it, he drew back, and a look of joy came into his eyes. He stood there motionless, and in wonder. The sense of his own beauty came on him. He had never felt it before. Basil Hallward's compliments never influenced his nature. He had listened to them, laughed at them, forgotten them. Then had come Lord Henry with his strange speech on youth, and now he stood looking at his own beauty. Yes, there would be a day when his face would be wrinkled, his eyes dull and colorless, the body broken and deformed. The red would pass away from his lips, and the gold would go away from his hair. He would become dreadful, old, and ugly. As he thought of it, a sharp pain went through him like a knife. He felt as if a hand of ice had been laid upon his heart. "Don't you like it?" cried Hallward at last, surprised by his silence, not understanding what it meant. "Of course he likes it," said Lord Henry. "Who wouldn't like it? It is one of the greatest things in modern art. I will give you anything you like to ask for it. I must have it." "It is not my property, Harry." "Whose property is it?" "Dorian's, of course," answered the painter. "He is very lucky indeed." "How sad it is," said Dorian Gray, with his eyes still fixed upon his own portrait. "How sad it is. I shall grow old and horrible and dreadful, but this picture will remain always young. It will never be older than this day of June. If it were only the other way, if it were I who was to be always young, and the picture that was to grow old, for that I would give everything. Yes, there is nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my soul for that." Dorian Gray turned and looked at the painter. "Basil," he said, "how long will you like me?" "Till I have my first wrinkle, I think. I know now that when one loses one's good looks, one loses everything. Your picture has taught me that. Lord Henry Wotton is right. Youth is the only thing worth having. When I find that I am growing old, I shall kill myself." Hallward turned pale and caught his hand. "Dorian! Dorian!" he cried. "Don't talk like that. I have never had such a friend as you, and I shall never have such another. I am jealous of everything whose beauty does not die. I am jealous of the portrait you have painted of me. Why should it keep what I must lose? Every moment that passes takes something from me and gives something to it. Oh, if it were only the other way, if the picture could change, and I could be always what I am now. Why did you paint it?" The hot tears ran down his face, and he buried it in his hands. "This is your doing, Harry," said the painter. "It is the real Dorian Gray, that is all," Lord Henry answered. "If it is not, what have I to do with it? I stayed when you asked me," was Lord Henry's answer. "Harry, I can't quarrel with my two best friends at once. But now I hate the finest piece of work, and I will destroy it. What is it but canvas? I will not let it come across our 3 lives." Dorian Gray looked at the painter. What was he going to do? Basil was looking for something. Yes, it was for the long knife. At last he found it, at last. He was going to destroy the portrait. The next moment Dorian rushed to Hallward, got the knife out of his hand, and threw it to the end of the studio. "Don't, Basil, don't," he cried. "It would be murder." "I am glad you like my work, Dorian," said the painter coldly. "Like it? I am in love with it, Basil. It is part of myself, I feel that." "Well, as soon as you are dry, you shall be sent home. Then you can do what you like with yourself." And he walked across the room and rang the bell for tea. "You will have tea, of course, Dorian, and so will you, Harry." There came a knock at the door, and the servant entered with tea. "Let us go to the theatre tonight," said Lord Henry. "It is so boring to put on evening clothes," said Hallward, "and when one has them on, they are so ugly." "Yes," answered Lord Henry, "the costume of the 19th century is terrible. It is so dark, so depressing. Sin is the only real color element left in modern life." "You really must not say things like that before Dorian, Harry." "Before which Dorian? The one who is having tea with us, or the one in the picture?" "Before either." "I should like to come to the theatre with you, Lord Henry," said Dorian. "Then you will come. And you will come too, Basil, won't you?" "I can't, really. I have a lot of work to do." "Well then, you and I will go alone, Mr. Gray." "I should like that awfully." The painter bit his lip and walked to the picture. "I shall stay with the real Dorian," he said sadly. "Is it the real Dorian?" cried the original of the portrait. "Am I really like that?" "Yes, you are just like that." "How wonderful, Basil!" "At least you like it, but it will never change," said Hallward. "That is something. Don't go to the theatre tonight, Dorian. Stop and dine with me." "I can't, Basil." "Why?" "Because I have promised Lord Henry Wotton to go with him." "I beg you not to go." Dorian Gray laughed and shook his head. "I must go, Basil," he answered. "Very well," said Hallward. "It is rather late, and as you have to dress, you had better lose no time. Goodbye, Harry." "Goodbye, Dorian. Come and see me soon. Come tomorrow." "Certainly. You won't forget?" "No, of course not," cried Dorian. "And, Harry—" "Yes, Basil?" "Remember what I asked you when we were in the garden this morning." "I have forgotten it." "I trust you." "I wish I could trust myself," said Lord Henry, laughing. "Come, Mr. Gray, I can drop you at your own place. Goodbye, Basil. It has been a most interesting afternoon." As the door closed behind them, the painter lay down on a sofa, and a look of pain came into his face.